ಶ್ರೀ ಗುರುಭ್ಯೋ ನಮಃ. ಸುತ್ತೂರು ಮಠದ ದಿವ್ಯ ಗುರು ಪರಂಪರೆಯನ್ನು ಭಕ್ತಿಪೂರ್ವಕವಾಗಿ ಸ್ಮರಿಸುತ್ತಾ ಈ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಕ್ಕೆ ದಿವ್ಯ ಸಾನ್ನಿಧ್ಯವನ್ನು ಅನುಗ್ರಹಿಸಿರುವ ಪರಮ ಪೂಜ್ಯ ಜಗದ್ಗುರು ಶ್ರೀ ಶಿವರಾತ್ರಿ ದೇಶಿಕೇಂದ್ರ ಮಹಾಸ್ವಾಮಿಗಳವರ ಪಾದಾರವಿಂದಗಳಿಗೆ ಭಕ್ತಿಪೂರ್ವಕವಾಗಿ ನಮಿಸುತ್ತಾ ಜ್ಞಾನವಾರಧಿ 29ನೇ ಸಂಚಿಕೆಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಸ್ವಾಗತ. ಜ್ಞಾನವಾರಧಿ ವಿಶೇಷ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸ ಮಾಲೆ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವನ್ನು 2020 ಡಿಸೆಂಬರ್ ತಿಂಗಳಿನಿಂದ ಪ್ರತಿ ಸೋಮವಾರ ಏರ್ಪಡಿಸಿಕೊಂಡು ಬರಲಾಗುತ್ತಿದೆ. ಧರ್ಮ, ಅಧ್ಯಾತ್ಮ, ಯೋಗ, ಕಲೆ, ಸಾಹಿತ್ಯ, ಸಂಸ್ಕೃತಿ, ಆರೋಗ್ಯ, ಜೀವನ ಶೈಲಿ, ವಿಜ್ಞಾನ, ತಂತ್ರಜ್ಞಾನ ಮುಂತಾದ ವಿಷಯಗಳ ಮತ್ತು ಪ್ರಚಲಿತ ವಿದ್ಯಮಾನಗಳನ್ನು ಕುರಿತು ದೇಶ ಮತ್ತು ವಿದೇಶದ ವಿವಿಧ ಸಂಪನ್ಮೂಲ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಗಳಿಂದ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸಗಳನ್ನು ಆಯೋಜಿಸಲಾಗುತ್ತಿದೆ. ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವನ್ನು ಪ್ರಾರ್ಥನೆಯೊಂದಿಗೆ ಪ್ರಾರಂಭಿಸೋಣ. ಪ್ರಾರ್ಥನೆಯನ್ನು ನೀಡಲಿದ್ದಾರೆ ರೂಪಾ ಗುರುಪ್ರಸಾದ್ ರವರು.
ಎನ್ನ ಕಾಯವ ದಂಡಿಗೆಯ ಮಾಡಯ್ಯ, ಎನ್ನ ಕಾಯವ ದಂಡಿಗೆಯ ಮಾಡಯ್ಯ, ಎನ್ನ ಶಿರವ ಸೋರೆಯ ಮಾಡಯ್ಯ, ಎನ್ನ ಕಾಯವ ದಂಡಿಗೆಯ ಮಾಡಯ್ಯ, ಎನ್ನ ಶಿರವ ಸೋರೆಯ ಮಾಡಯ್ಯ, ಎನ್ನ ಕಾಯವ ದಂಡಿಗೆಯ ಮಾಡಯ್ಯ, ಎನ್ನ ನರವ ತಂತಿಯ ಮಾಡಯ್ಯ, ಎನ್ನ ಬೆರಳ ಕಟ್ಟಿಯ ಮಾಡಯ್ಯ, ಎನ್ನ ನರವ ತಂತಿಯ ಮಾಡಯ್ಯ, ಎನ್ನ ಬೆರಳ ಕಟ್ಟಿಯ ಮಾಡಯ್ಯ, ಎನ್ನ ಕಾಯವ ದಂಡಿಗೆಯ ಮಾಡಯ್ಯ, ಬತ್ತೀಸರಾಗವ ಹಾಡಯ್ಯ, ಉರದಲ್ ಒತ್ತಿ ಬಾರಿಸಯ್ಯ, ಬತ್ತೀಸರಾಗವ ಹಾಡಯ್ಯ, ಉರದಲ್ ಒತ್ತಿ ಬಾರಿಸಯ್ಯ, ಎನ್ನ ಕಾಯವ ದಂಡಿಗೆಯ ಮಾಡಯ್ಯ, ಎನ್ನ ಶಿರವ ಸೋರೆಯ ಮಾಡಯ್ಯ, ಎನ್ನ ಕಾಯವ ದಂಡಿಗೆಯ ಮಾಡಯ್ಯ, ಕೂಡಲ ಸಂಗಮ ದೇವಾ, ಕೂಡಲ ಸಂಗಮ ದೇವಾ, ಕೂಡಲ ಸಂಗಮ ದೇವಾ, ಎನ್ನ ಕಾಯವ ದಂಡಿಗೆಯ ಮಾಡಯ್ಯ, ಎನ್ನ ಶಿರವ ಸೋರೆಯ ಮಾಡಯ್ಯ, ಎನ್ನ ಕಾಯವ ದಂಡಿಗೆಯ ಮಾಡಯ್ಯ, ದಂಡಿಗೆಯ ಮಾಡಯ್ಯ, ದಂಡಿಗೆಯ ಮಾಡಯ್ಯ.
ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವನ್ನು ಪ್ರಾರ್ಥನೆಯೊಂದಿಗೆ ಶುರು ಮಾಡಿದ ರೂಪಾ ಗುರುಪ್ರಸಾದ್ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವನ್ನು ಪದ್ಮವಿಭೂಷಣ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ವಿ.ಕೆ. ಆತ್ರೆ, ಹಿರಿಯ ವಿಜ್ಞಾನಿಗಳು, ನಿವೃತ್ತ ಮಹಾನಿರ್ದೇಶಕರು, DRDO ಬೆಂಗಳೂರು, ಇವರು ವಿಜ್ಞಾನ ಮತ್ತು ತಂತ್ರಜ್ಞಾನದಲ್ಲಿ ಭಾರತ ಮಹಾನ್ ಶಕ್ತಿಶಾಲಿಯಾಗಲು ಸಾಧ್ಯವೇ ಎಂಬ ವಿಷಯದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ನಡೆಸಿಕೊಡಲಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ವಿ.ಕೆ. ಆತ್ರೆ ಇವರು ಬೆಂಗಳೂರಿನ UVCE ಇಂದ BE ಪದವಿಯನ್ನು ಮತ್ತು ಕೆನಡಾದ ವಾಟರ್ಲೂ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾನಿಲಯದಿಂದ PhD ಅನ್ನು ಪಡೆದರು. ಕೆನಡಾದ ಹ್ಯಾಲಿಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಸ್ ನೋವಸ್ಕೋಶಿಯಾ ತಾಂತ್ರಿಕ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾನಿಲಯದಲ್ಲಿ 12 ವರ್ಷ ಪ್ರಾಧ್ಯಾಪಕರಾಗಿ ಕಾರ್ಯನಿರ್ವಹಿಸಿದರು. ಅನಂತರ ಕೊಚ್ಚಿಯ DRDOನಲ್ಲಿ ನೇವಲ್ ಫಿಸಿಕಲ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಓಷನೋಗ್ರಫಿ ಪ್ರಯೋಗಾಲಯದ ಪ್ರಿನ್ಸಿಪಲ್ ವೈಜ್ಞಾನಿಕ ಅಧಿಕಾರಿಗಳಾಗಿ ಮತ್ತು ನಿರ್ದೇಶಕರಾಗಿ 11 ವರ್ಷಗಳು ಸೇವೆ ಸಲ್ಲಿಸಿದರು. ಭಾರತೀಯ ನೌಕಾಪಡೆಯ ಹಡಗುಗಳು, ಸಬ್ಮೆರೀನ್ಗಳು ಮತ್ತು ವಿಮಾನಗಳ ಸೋನಾರ್ ವಿನ್ಯಾಸ ಅಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿಪಡಿಸುವಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರಮುಖ ಪಾತ್ರ ವಹಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅಲ್ಲಿಯೇ ಮತ್ತೆ 8 ವರ್ಷಗಳ ಕಾಲ ಸಾಮರಿಕ ಹಾಗೂ ಸಂವಹನಗಳ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆ, ರೇಡಾರ್ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆಗಳ ವಿಭಾಗದ ಚೀಫ್ ಕಂಟ್ರೋಲರ್ ಆಗಿದ್ದರು. ಬಳಿಕ DRDO ಮತ್ತು ಏರೋನಾಟಿಕಲ್ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಏಜೆನ್ಸಿ ಮಹಾನಿರ್ದೇಶಕರಾಗಿ ಹಾಗೂ ರಕ್ಷಣಾ ಸಚಿವರ ವೈಜ್ಞಾನಿಕ ಸಲಹೆಗಾರರಾಗಿ 5 ವರ್ಷ ಕರ್ತವ್ಯ ನಿರ್ವಹಿಸಿದರು. ಅನಂತರ 10 ವರ್ಷ ಮೈಕ್ರೋ ಮತ್ತು ನ್ಯಾನೋ ವಿನ್ಯಾಸ ಮತ್ತು ಅಭಿವೃದ್ಧಿ ವಿಭಾಗದ ನೇತೃತ್ವ ವಹಿಸಿದ್ದರು. ಸಾಗರ ಧ್ವನಿ ಸಂಶೋಧನಾ ನೌಕೆಯ ರೂವಾರಿಗಳು, ಅಸಾಧಾರಣ ಮೇಧಾವಿಗಳು, ಸಂಘಟನಾ ಚತುರರು ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಆತ್ರೆ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಲಭಿಸಿರುವ ಪ್ರಶಸ್ತಿಗಳ ಸಂಖ್ಯೆ ಅಪರಿಮಿತ. 10ಕ್ಕೂ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಅಂತಾರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ಮನ್ನಣೆಗಳಿಗೆ ಪಾತ್ರರಾಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ವಿಶ್ವೇಶ್ವರಯ್ಯ ತಾಂತ್ರಿಕ ವಿದ್ಯಾಲಯ ಮತ್ತು ಹೈದರಾಬಾದ್ ವಿಶ್ವವಿದ್ಯಾನಿಲಯಗಳು ಗೌರವ ಡಾಕ್ಟರೇಟ್ ನೀಡಿ ಇವರನ್ನು ಗೌರವಿಸಿವೆ. ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ಸೈನ್ಸ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜಿ ಅಕಾಡೆಮಿ, ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ ಸೊಸೈಟಿ ಆಫ್ ಇಂಡಿಯಾ ಮತ್ತು DRDO ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಗಳ ಜೀವಮಾನದ ಸಾಧನೆ ಪ್ರಶಸ್ತಿಗಳು ಇವರಿಗೆ ಲಭಿಸಿವೆ. ಹಲವಾರು ಪ್ರತಿಷ್ಠಿತ ಫೆಲೋಶಿಪ್ಗಳು ದೊರೆತಿವೆ. ಕೇಂದ್ರ ಸರ್ಕಾರದ ಪದ್ಮಭೂಷಣ ಮತ್ತು ಪದ್ಮವಿಭೂಷಣ ಪ್ರಶಸ್ತಿಗಳಿಗೆ ಇವರು ಭಜನರಾಗಿದ್ದಾರೆ. I extend a warm welcome to Dr. Atre, and now I request him to deliver the special lectures.
Thank you.
And I also would like to add, if anybody has questions in between, they can drop it in the chat box. A few selected questions will be answered by Professor Atre.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. First of all, good evening. My greetings to the entire JSS community. I must congratulate them on launching a program like Gnana Varidhi, and it certainly is my pleasure to address this group on this day. I have been puttering around technology development, especially for defense services, for over 3 decades, and met with some successes. A question which has often arisen in my mind and worried me is, can India become a powerhouse in science and technology? The answer has to be it can, it should, and it must. Over the last few years, India has evinced interest in becoming a fully developed country and set its ambitions to become a world power. A country can become a world power only if it becomes an economic power. To become an economic power, it has to become knowledge power. Gnana Varidhi is appropriate perhaps. At the hub of this knowledge rests science and technology. Science and technology are the engines which propel the progress and prosperity of a country. It is technology, science-driven technology, which generates wealth for the country. The process of science and technology follows 3 I's: invention, innovation, and industrialization. Invention is something which gets done in an academic environment, where there is liberty to think unconventionally. Also, where there is a supply of uncluttered minds annually. This is where idea gets seeded, concept gets generated, technology gets started. And in the R&D laboratory, either attached to the academic environment or otherwise, this idea, this concept, this technology gets modeled to a product. And also probably potential applications will be delineated. It also gets trial in a simulated environment. Finally, it's the industry which converts this into a marketable and profitable product. This is where all the litis gets answered: scalability, manufacturability, reliability, maintainability, marketability, and all these issues. A country which can synergize the effects of these 3 I's, the academia, the R&D laboratories, and industry, is the one which is going to dominate the science and technology field. Let's evaluate how well we have done in these three fields. Our academic institutions have produced outstanding graduates like Vinod Khoslas, Pachus, Nadelas. Our graduate students are wanted by most of the Western universities. We dominate Silicon Valley. Our talent is so large that most of the international multinational companies have their R&D centers in India. We have certainly made a dent in science and technology development. Our R&D institutions have done wonderfully. Look at ISRO. It has launched several satellites for several applications like communication, remote sensing, earth resources monitoring, and national defense. It has a pioneering status in launching micro and mini satellites. It has completed programs like Chandrayana and Mahayana. Our defense laboratories have developed various equipments for application to defense. Light compact aircraft, which is the international class supersonic compact aircraft, Agni missiles, radars, Pinaka, a wide area rocket system, and many of the other things. Our atomic energy has created a niche for itself, and it has pioneering status in developing fast breeder reactors. We have a very vibrant manufacturing industry, which does supply a lot of manufactured goods to the world. We have done wonderfully in pharmaceuticals, in fabrics, and certain aspects of biotechnology. Our information technology industry is world renowned. We provide services to a very large part of the world and spread across the world. In the recent times, we have become a hub for startup companies. All these things has propelled India to be the fifth largest economy. In 70 years since its independence, no other country except China has achieved as much as we have done. Yet, if we ask the question, is India a powerhouse in science and technology? Has India developed a product which is conceived, designed, developed, manufactured, and marketed by India and are world renowned? The answer is no. So while the Indians are so good, why is that India is not doing as good? This is a question which you have to ponder, and we have to understand what is behind that. Let's look at the details. While our academic institutions produce outstanding graduates, very few of the academic institutions are considered as world standard institutions. Almost no Indian academic institution appears in the top 150 of the world standing of the institutions. We are the third largest science and technology paper production country after US and China. Recently, one of our institutions was considered the best R&D university. Yet, except for a handful of institutions, if you look at the kind of papers produced, it's more like Me Too. They don't develop new areas, they don't develop new technologies, don't develop new concepts. Amidst all this, the number of youngsters studying science in India is reducing. India has 4 scientists for 10,000 population. China has 18, and America has close to 100. Even people like Bharat Ratna C.N.R. Rao are really worried about the science and development in India. Whenever there is an article about science in India, it is not very complimentary to India. So clearly our academic institutions should look at what we have to do. Our academic institutions, or a cluster of them, are they capable of generating such kind of a synergetic, symbiotic relationship as Stanford had with Silicon Valley? If Stanford was not there, Silicon Valley wouldn't have been there. Why is that we are unable to create such kind of synergetic, symbiotic relationship? We ourselves know that even all of our youngsters who go abroad, go to especially American continent, produce a lot. But somehow when they come back to India, they seems to be not as productive. Is something wrong with our environment? Something wrong with our academic standards? And so on. We have hundreds of engineering institutions producing thousands and thousands of engineering graduates. We ourselves argue that 50% of them are not employable. Except for a handful of institutions, the training and the kind of education we are given in these colleges leaves a lot to be desired. Our academic institutions have many other problems also. Funding. Funding is just subcritical. Many of the institutions survive by skin of the teeth, as if to say. So obviously they don't have international class infrastructure to move things. Our structure and administrative also in the university is not good enough. Whenever we appoint a vice chancellor, there is a contradiction. There is a complaint. There is unhappiness, indicating as if you are not selected the best person available or the best person suited for the job. Clearly, we have to look at some of these issues. It's nothing to do with talent. We have a huge amount of talent. We have to look at the organizational things about this. World spends approximately about $1 trillion on R&D. India is a very small part. Our R&D budget is of the order of 0.7% of GDP. We have been trying to raise the percentage for the last several decades. I myself have been involved in several discussions regarding this. Yet, it stays at 0.7%. If you want to really become a powerhouse of technology, we have to bump it to 2%, if not 4%. On the other hand, if next year, when the government becomes generous and gives us 2% of GDP as R&D fund, we are not capable of absorbing it. We neither have the infrastructure nor the manpower to do it. And also, our planning horizon of technology, especially cutting-edge technology, is rather poor. I want to give you an example. In the early 90s, by a strange coincidences and accidents, I got involved in a technology called micro and smart systems. I collected a few people of same thinking, and decided to look at this technology, as this technology has a very wide application in almost every field of human endeavor. That was the stage when I had some influence in the government and I could get programs sanctioned. So I got 2 programs sanctioned spanning over 12 years for this technology. When we started this program, there are hardly a handful of people, maybe 20, 30 people, who understood what is this field, what is the science behind the field, what kind of technology is necessary behind the field. So during the first program, we learned about the science behind the field. We spread the science behind the field. We grew the 30 to 40 to about nearly 500 people. We even established certain fabrication processes. We dabbled with few of the technologies. In the second program, we started nearly 70 design centers in academic institutes all across India. The manpower from 500 went to nearly 5,000. We had several dozens of PhD students working on this new field. We even had started producing technology. We had a couple of technologies which were ready to be transferred to the industry. And we had made some trials and estimated that this could be productized and marketed. We started new fields like sexual health monitoring, integrated vehicle health monitoring systems, which are very important for our future cars and aircrafts. Yet, when we are on the verge of technology development, our funding dried. We had to close the program. I am sure bits and pieces of the program are still being supported by various government organizations. But we lost an orientation, we lost a goal-oriented, directed program, and we lost several years. This has happened in several cases. I can give you examples. Our industries do a lot of manufacturing, but most of the manufacturing is through a already manufactured product, through license production and technology transfer. Somehow they are very reluctant to take the not so mature technologies coming out of our academic institutions and R&D laboratories and convert it into products. Their interaction with the academic environment, in most of the cases, is limited to year-end campus recruitment. Most of our industries do not seem to have an in-house R&D environment, and their interaction with the universities is very, very limited. They do not seem to put enough money for R&D or academic institutions, unlike in America, where Stanford, Harvard, and all survive by these kind of industrial funds. So we must look at what is happening. If we want to become powerhouse in technology, which we can and we should, we must build outstanding academic institutions. Fund them properly. Free them from bureaucratic rules and regulations. Give them enough academic freedom. Give them sufficient money to build infrastructure. And if they leave them free, I think in a few years, they are going to become outstanding academic institutions. We should sufficiently fund our R&D. We must have a long-range R&D program. We hardly make a dent in fields like lasers, photonics, robotics, flexible electronics. I can go on like this. We have not funded them enough. Our industries must be proactive, not wait for the academic institution to go. These are all things which you have to do. And of course, there is a necessity of certain changes in the policies. But there is also something else. Even if we have outstanding academic institutions, even if you have sufficient funds for R&D, even we have very active industry, we must also develop our civilian infrastructure and general infrastructure to an extent. We build excellent roads. But for every road we build, good road we build, we have a bad road. Showing our lack of professionalism. In the execution of infrastructural projects, there is a lack of professionalism. A certain amount of lack of integrity also. Let me give you a very simple example. In Bangalore, there is an intersection called Sivananda Circle intersection, which has a certain amount of traffic problem and perhaps required an overbridge. It has only one set of traffic lights. Somebody had a bright idea to build a steel overbridge. Against the recommendation of all experts, against the recommendation of all civilian sectors, they went ahead. Even after 5 years, the project is not complete. From what I hear, there's a tremendous amount of lack of integrity. And many of my friends who know believe that it's going to end up as a scam. I am sure each one of you can think of instances for these kinds of things. So we must look at professionalism, what we have to do. We must look at how to develop the infrastructure, how to develop the infrastructure for technology development. There is another factor which we have to consider. What is the national will? India has a national will not to collapse. Few years back, when all over the world under recession were doing bad, India was doing very good. India was the fastest growing economy. So India can do. As I gave examples of R&D, if we want to really succeed, we succeed. I myself have been involved in a number of projects, like radars, sonars, electronic warfare programs, missiles. All of them have succeeded. Of course, they are not industrial wealth producers like the general technology. India must have will to excel, will to succeed. Here where some certain amount of philosophy comes in. You may all remember that when we are youngsters, we went out to play games and in sports. The message we carried was, enjoy your sports and games. It doesn't matter whether you win or not. This is not an attitude. We must go into the game to win. If we don't win, doesn't matter. But we must go with the attitude to win. Only if you go with that attitude, then we will succeed. So India's will is very important. Let me spend a few minutes with the individuals. We may have outstanding academic institutions, we may have sufficient funding, we may have excellent industries, infrastructures and everything, but we need champions. We need champions for promoting innovation. We need champions for developing technology. We must have champions to look at how to mentor youngsters to make them become champions. So individuals are also equally important. Are we really attempting to become experts? Can we always do better than our best? Whether our best is good enough or not should not be the criteria. Every time we must do the better than our best. We must clearly have a purpose in our life. We must have passion and we must persevere. These are the three P's which are very important. Purpose, passion, and perseverance. And also, we must be guided by certain amount of nationality, certain amount of, what shall I say, idealistic behavior. We must somehow keep telling ourselves, Janani Janma Bhumishcha Sargadapi Gariyasi. Every time when we do anything, that mother and motherland are much better than heaven. So we must work for it. I think that is what is missing in India. India has a huge amount of talent. India has a fair amount of industry-oriented people. That's why startups are coming in. But somehow or other, we don't seem to put together and do mantana, a churning to produce the cream. If we want to do that, there are several aspects we have to consider. As I said, the most important aspect, again and again I stress, is to build outstanding academic institutions. We must have Stanfords, MITs, Berkeleys, Caltechs, Cambridge universities, Princetons, and so on. If one is not there, you have to go there. The competition, and also we must look at something else. Why have American universities succeeded? Why is this American universities seem to produce the best out of everybody? It's diversity of population. It's heterogeneity of the population. It's intermingling of ideas from various cultures. Indian academic institutions are too homogeneous. We keep arguing that these seats should be given to only local people. We keep arguing that the job should be given for local people. We want to go to a conclave and say, we got into a shell, this is all ours, it's our country and our state, our language, and we want to stick to it. That doesn't happen in Western universities. So this diversity is a very important issue we should consider. Even if you have enough talent, if you do not have the intermingling of the cultures coming from various, rather intermingling with the ideas coming from various cultures, we are not going to use it. Few years back, there was a Scientific American article which went through this diversity process of American universities and proved how the American university, which has the greatest diversities, have become the greatest producer of what is called intellectual property. Do Indian universities produce intellectual property? If they do, why is that we don't hear about them? Why is that we don't hear about them productization? So that is the concept in academic university. Good infrastructure, good funding for the infrastructure, free from bureaucratic and rules and regulations, open-minded, professional, and only meritocracy that counts. Select the right kind of people to administer the university, and all our youngsters are so talented, we can produce outstanding academic institutions. We must look at R&D and certainly look at a long-term horizon. An R&D has more than 10 to 15 years of incubation period. During the first 4 to 5 or 10 years, you may see that it's a draining of funds, but it doesn't happen like that. It takes time to produce technology. It takes time to produce mature technology. It takes time to produce productizable technology. Our industries should intermingle with academic environment and industrial environment. To fund them, to guide them, mentor them, what is that is going to be manufactured? What is that is productionizable? What is that is marketable? We must always be looking at invention, innovation, and industrialization. The happy thing is, in the last few years, there has been a change in our attitude. We are now honestly looking at making a powerhouse in science and technology and a world power. We talk of manufacturing in India. We talk of self-reliance. I hope these are not just flags. We seriously mean by that. So we can be cautiously optimistic that India could be done. Indians are very good. We've got to make India very good. Certain change in attitudes, certain change in rules and regulations, certain change in acceptance that we must do it. But there is also one other thing which many people argue. There is a certain amount of inevitability that India will, in the long run, become a technology power and world power. Maybe that can happen in 30, 40 years. Why should we wait for 40 years? Why can't we do what China did in 20 years? I am not sure that China had much more talent and innovative manpower than we have. We have a very young manpower. We have a very enthusiastic manpower. A manpower which is involved in most of the very major developments, not only in India, outside India and in other countries. Can we put all our actions together? We can't just keep on saying it's only the government, it is only the policy, it's only the administration which is timing it. All of us must think that we have things to contribute. If we do that, then what can be achieved in the next 15 to 20 years is amazing. We have proved it in the examples we have given. Chandrayana and Mangalayana. Where did the manpower come from? Come from India. Did they have an enormous amount of money to waste? No, they didn't. How did LCA come out? It's the same kind of people who came from our colleges and others. They were all mentored to become outstanding. To become outstanding is not easy, but you have to attempt. I also tend to believe that one very important issue, producing outstanding output from outstanding people is nothing outstanding. If we can produce outstanding people from ordinary people, then it is outstanding. It can be done. There have been enough examples in India to be done. But as a nation, we have to make a decision. As a nation, we must have a will to succeed. As a nation, we must have a will to exceed. I occasionally tell students, go with Virat Kohli's attitude. You must win every match. You must hit every ball to your forearms. That is the thing which we have to do. That is what is fundamentally lacking in India. So the question, whether India will become a dominant power in academic institution is not just rhetoric. It certainly can. It certainly will But I want it to happen in the lifespan of some of you youngsters who are listening to this. But go with an idealism. Go with a policy that it can be done. Though it's slightly out of context, I want to leave you with one message of few lines which is taken from Bhagavad Gita. It says, Uddhare datmana atmanam, atmanam avasadayat, atmaiva hyatmeva bandhuratmaiva ripuratmana. In essence, what it means is, one can become one's own friend. One can become one's own enemy. One can rise oneself from one's own deed. Let's rise ourselves with our deeds and let's break friends of ourselves. India is bound to become an outstanding science and technology power and world power. Thank you.
Sir, one question. You, in your lecture, have mentioned that science is one tool. Concentrating on science education can render India to be the next power. So, can you elaborate on that? That's one question which is comes.
If you look at all the technological developments, there is a science behind it. Let's look at this something which is very familiar to us, microelectronics. Today, microelectronics is everywhere. You know, without microelectronic chips, there is no technology. How did microelectronics originate? Somebody invented a transistor. In 1945, William Shockley, Britain and Barton invented transistor. By early 50s, they started marking transistors. By early 60s, they put 6 transistors together and made an integrated chip. But how did the transistors arise? It arose because of quantum theory, which was purely a theory which started in 1900. And at that stage, it looked like mathematical theory. And finally ended up with producing transistors, CMOS, all these technologies came out of. So science is very important. Look at lasers. How did lasers come out? Again, it's a quantum mechanical concept. There is what's called a population inversion. And because of population inversion, the way it loses energy, we have a coherent light. We have a coherent light in the sense of a light of single frequency. I can give you an example. For every technology, there is a science behind it. Science is the one which is motivator. But I am not saying do science research of only particle physics. No, but science which can produce technology. We don't have to be worried about the classical application of science, which is understanding nature, nature's equations, and so on. But you must understand the science behind technology. For example, nanotechnology. It came from science, nanoscience. But now that science must be technology. So if you do not consider science itself, we are not going to take technology. We are always going to be dependent on somebody else to develop the scientific thing. So science is important. Science also is a motivator. Science is the one which produces newer and newer ideas. You know, when you suddenly say, today we are talking microelectronics, we are talking about flexible electronics. Whether the transistors can be made flexible like a thing and can be rolled up. It's already being done. So science is very important. And we don't spend enough money on science. We tend to think science means something only esoteric and which doesn't have to be. But we must do application-oriented science or applied science. That is why science is important. If you neglect science, very soon you are going to neglect technology. If you neglect science and very soon you are going to neglect technology, you are going to suddenly become poorer country and poorer and poorer. So this is a chain. We have to excel in science. We don't have to excel in all aspects of science. We have to excel in those aspects of science, perhaps which lead to technology. Those technologies which are very important to our environment first, and then the international environment. Okay?
Sir, another viewer has asked, what is the other source of funding for R&D other than state funding?
You cannot have state funding for all colleges. The state is not reserved to fund. Industries have to come into it. You know, I am sure you are aware in your own institution, alumni must have put sufficient funds for development.
Yes, sir.
So if you go to Bombay IIT, you see the effect of alumni who generate funds or feed to them. So we must look state funding. We must look at industrial funding. We must look at alumni funding. Of late, you must look at crowdfunding. Very recently, during the COVID one, somebody who wanted crores of rupees for an injection, crowd suddenly started putting funds and helping that child. So we must look at alternative fundings. And also, we must go, because the funding is going to be limited. Every university cannot specialize in every aspect of science and technology. We must look at what are our strengths. Where do we want to grow? For example, at one stage, I know that you had a very powerful material sciences department. And so maybe that was the area which you should concentrate and push them up. Not other areas are not important for teaching. But for R&D, because of the funding problem, you should look at it. We must look at various kinds of funding. Fundamentally, I don't think India is poor. And you keep hearing every other day, $10,000 scam, $25,000 scam, 6,000 crore, rather 6,000 crores and another scams. Where is this money all coming from? Can we look at it exactly? That is why you cannot specialize in every field. The government should decide these are the areas which we are going to do till we generate enough wealth. Today we are the 5th largest economy. If we start generating wealth, maybe we will become the 2nd or 3rd most economy. Then we will increase our R&D fund from 2 to 4%, if not 6%. At that government funding. Government funding is the seeding funding. And it has to be supported from industrial funding. If industry does not fund, we can't generate funds for the university.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. It was really a very elaborative and the right kind of topic which everybody enjoyed. And I immensely thank Professor Atre for having delivered this lecture on a very interesting topic. Thank you very much, sir. I also thank His Holiness for his divine blessings. I thank Sri Almaty Swamiji, and I thank all the organizers and participants for making this program a real interesting and successful one. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
And I would also like to announce that Gnanavaridhi 30 will be taking place on 28th June 2021, and wherein Sri Guru Basava Pattadevaru, Sri Hiremata Samsthana, Balki, Bidar Jille will deliver a lecture on Basaveshwararu Andu Indu. Thank you all.
Good night.